AMD's 9060 cards are days away. So, do you guys reckon they'll be good? Hey, what's cracking everybody? The 9060 XT series of GPUs are coming in hot and they're just days away, so before the reviews hit, I wanted to put my take in. Now, I'm cutting this one a little bit close, so you may even be getting this one on launch day, so you'll be able to judge me in real time. So let's get stuck into it and have a look at this thing. First off, the 9060 XT has 32 compute units, it's got 64 AI accelerators, it's also got 32 ray accelerators, we've got a base clock of 2.2 gigahertz and a boost clock of 3.1 gigahertz. For the memory, we've got two variants here, right? We've got the 8GB version, which is running at 20 gigabits per second on 128-bit bus, and then we've got the 16GB version, which is also running on 20 gigabits per second on a 128-bit bus. Now, one thing I do really quickly want to touch on is this bullshit with the naming that AMD have done. They've just flat out copied NVIDIA and they've just grouped the whole GPU series as the 9060 XT. They don't even differentiate between the 8 and 16 gigabyte variants. This just sucks, man, because it's not me or you guys that get confused about any of it. It's like your little cousin who just wants to play Fortnite in a new system when they get a a brand new system, or like someone's grandma who's buying a gift for their grandson and they go out and buy them their first computer. They're the type of people who get confused by this shit, and it really sucks that NVIDIA and now AMD are both playing the same game on this. But you know what I mean? I think it just sucks when the aim of naming it that is just to, confuse kids and grandmas and parents who don't know any better. I think it's bullshit. Anyway, guys, listen, that's why computer games hardware is here. So, we talk about a lot of high-end stuff here, but if you're not sure about that kind of stuff and you need to know that you're getting what you paid for, please let me know in the comments down below. I will try to respond. I try to respond to everyone who's nice and reasonable and asking a genuine question. So that won't be a problem. And be rest assured, if I don't know, one of our community members certainly will. So sound off in the comments. This is like a community where you can ask questions and get answers and stuff like that. That's what we're here for. That's what we do here. So please feel free to shout out in the comments down below if you have questions for that. If someone doesn't know, we'll figure it out. So thanks for watching, everybody. Now, here's what confuses me and what I'm a little disappointed about the most on this series of GPUs, and it's the 128-bit bus. I would have thought with GDDR6 that AMD would have been trying to catch up with some of that performance by giving consumers a little bit of extra bandwidth and putting this thing on a 192-bit bus. That would have been a pretty good boost in performance. The 9070 is on a 256-bit bus, so the next drop down would have made the most sense to me, but they haven't done that, so I'm not too sure why. It's going to hinder performance a little bit. I'm not sure what the calculation is, and I know we're talking about a lower end card, but you would have thought with GDDR6 being as old as it is, they would have tried to claw back a little bit more performance and have this thing performing at the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte version. That's what would have made the most sense to me, to catch NVIDIA with a little bit extra bandwidth. Gotcha, bitch! So I'm a little not too sure that they made the right move there. I think they missed an opportunity to sort of have this perform like really close to the 5060 Ti 16GB version, that would have been really impressive, and most people would have been singing this thing's praises. The memory bandwidth on this thing comes in at 320 gigabytes a second. So, and that seems a little bit low to me. I think there would have been some more room in that as well. But that's what it is, so there you go. You also got 32 megabytes of Infinity Cache on this card, and it is PCIe Gen 5 x 16. Now, the total board power for these cards are pretty reasonable. On the 8GB version, you've got 150 watts, and then up into the 16 version, you get 160 watts. So these things are going to stay nice and cool in your system. Pretty good. Now, you get some bells and whistles with this thing. So you get 2 display ports that are 2.1A, and then you get the one HDMI 2.1 output as well. So pretty good there. This thing is set to arrive on June the 5th, so we're really close up to it. So let's talk about the performance. Now, AMD claims that the 9060 XT 16GB version is 5% faster than the 5060 Ti 8GB version across something like 40 titles. And they're also saying it offers 15% better price to performance than the 8GB 5060 Ti. Now, that's all cool and everything, and that may be true. However, now this thing has a better direct competitor, and that is the 5060 Ti 16GB version. So as we talked about before, and they probably don't want to talk about that because as we mentioned before with the memory bus, it probably comes in a little bit slower than the 16GB 5060 Ti, and AMD don't want you to know that. But I'm not sure why they didn't go with that move, because the price to performance between those two cards would be pretty excellent as well. So that's what I would have been banking on, that this thing comes really close to the 5060 Ti 16GB version at, $60, $70, $80 discount. That would have been pretty impressive, but they probably missed the mark a little bit, so now they're marketing it against the 8GB version. So honestly, I would have been focusing on the massive price difference between those two cards, but I have a really bad feeling that AMD actually want to get this thing really close to that price. So on that, let's talk about price for a second. AMD confirmed at Computex that the price will start at $299 US, that's $465 Australian for the 8GB version, and $349, which comes to about $560 Australian for the 16GB version. Now, look, I know I say this shit all the time, but this time it's really true that these cards will live and die on these prices. And you know why? Because we're already seeing like US retailers already putting a markup on these things from $20 to $40 depending on the variant, and the cards aren't even out yet. So if you can't get any of these cards at the MSRP, the conversation is going to start looking pretty grim if they start going up from an already $40 premium for these cards. All right, so let's be realistic about this, right? If these cards land at around 430 US, which is translates to about 650 Australian, people will still buy them. It's just a fact of life. People need cards. They want these cards. So people will still buy them at that price. But if they start creeping up to the like $500 US mark, which turns out to be something like $770, Australian, that's going to be a pretty tough sell. So AMD don't have much wiggle room right now for these cards. I mean, I'll even call it, they'll be dead on arrival, because let's be honest, if you're getting up to the $500 mark US, you just start looking at a 5070 or a 9070 or the XT or the TI models there as well. So, and let's not forget that, 4060 Ti's, 7700 XTs, they all exist, that you can get them. So, you know, AMD haven't got much to play with around here, so price is going to be everything. Now, another little thing I wanted to quickly touch on is the argument about 8GB of VRAM. I know there's been lots of conversations at Computex and other tech tubers that are talking about 8GB of VRAM just not being enough for modern gamers, and I tend to disagree a little bit. There are plenty of gamers that will be extremely happy, like even upgrading to an 8GB of VRAM system. People who are playing their Fortnite, Overwatch, all those type of titles, competitive titles, you know, people playing at 1080p. So that's not the big gripe for me. Is it for me? No, I'm not going to buy one. But, you know, there are people who need value for money cards. And so I think there is a place in the world for them. But the price has got to be right, baby. And like I said before, you know, people need to know what they're getting. They shouldn't be playing this stupid game with the naming schemes to make their, like, you know, board partners and system integrators happy. That just sucks. You should be, like, you know, offering those things to consumers at a better price and saying, here's what it is, here's all the details. You know what I mean? So that's where I go on that. I'm not too concerned about 8GB models of GPUs if you get what you're paying for and they're upfront about it. Alright, so we've gone the long way around, so let's finish off the video by asking, do I think they're going to be any good? Sure, competitive gamers, you know, those games we talked about, Fortnite, Overwatch, all those sort of stuff, you're going to have a good time with these cards if you can get them at the MSRP. As I said, AMD don't have much wiggle room here, so they better be providing at least some of these cards at the MSRP. If they don't, it's going to be a disaster. And if the prices creep up like all the other GPUs have in 2025, let's be honest about it, they haven't stayed at that MSRP for very long. They're not going to have a good time. They're going to sit on shelves for a little while. People are going to wait for a discount, and people are going to be tricked into buying them in, you know, system integrator builds and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that this is good, but I'm going to be a bit pessimistic on this one and say that, you know, they're going to try and price match NVIDIA for the classes of cards they are. So I think that they're going to try and get the 16GB XT really close to the 5060 Ti 16GB, and you know, I don't think it's going to be comparable in performance there, but I'm hoping I'm wrong. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that these things are going to stay valuable for money and are good for gamers? Let me know in the comments down below. Are you planning a system build with a 9060 XT, a 16 or 8GB version? Let me know. What do you guys think about the conversation around 8GB of VRAM? Now, you're never going to get the, you know, the visual fidelity and the performance out of them, but hey, is there a place for them? Let me know in the comments down below. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I've had a really good time making this one. I hope you guys have had a good time watching it, and I will check you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.